It's been a few episodes since an episode of the Doris Day Show focused on LeRoy, so I was really looking forward to the tournament. I read the brief description before I watched it. It sounded really interesting, and I'm pleased to say it really is. This is the 19th episode of the first season, directed by Gary Nelson, and it aired in February 1969. To be honest, not that much happens in it. It's not the most eventful, but it's very wholesome, it's good fun, and it has a toaster in it that really looks like it can't toast. Obviously a product of its time, but that's an aspect that was just a small detail that I really enjoyed. Another small detail is Doris Day's mention of Calamity Jane. Well, those small details aside, the overarching narrative I really like. Buck and a friend of his are practicing horseshoe throwing ahead of a horseshoe throwing competition. And they're pretty decent at it, they're doing well. LeRoy wants to take them something to drink to keep them cool and be helpful, because LeRoy's genuinely a really nice person, and Doris kind of says, maybe don't do that, they're practicing, but he doesn't listen, he goes along, he kind of gets in the way, and one thing leads to another, and Buck's partner ends up getting an injury. That means he can't throw horseshoes anymore. But unbeknown to them, and something that LeRoy doesn't boast about, LeRoy is actually an incredible horseshoe thrower. And it looks like maybe Buck's luck is turning and they will be able to enter the competition together, and that is so sweet. Buck and LeRoy don't always see eye to eye. I can definitely tell that Buck likes LeRoy and maybe think, well, does he look at him like a son? Maybe that's taking it too far. But there's definitely a positive relationship there, but often Buck kind of gets irritated by how much LeRoy gets in the way. So it's really refreshing and really sweet to have this positive relationship between the two of them. But obviously things don't always go to plan, and I'll discuss that in a moment with a spoiler warning as I kind of discuss one of what I perceive to be the main messages here. I really enjoyed the concept of horseshoe throwing a lot. It's very, wholesome and taking things back to basics. I don't know if horseshoe throwing is something that still happens at a competitive level. I imagine there will be places where it does happen. Certainly not near me. There were some continuity errors, really small continuity errors with the horseshoe throwing, but nothing that, I considered to be too bad or anything. And I really thoroughly enjoyed it. Doris Martin, the character, was not too prominent in it, but she was in it enough that it felt like the Doris Day Show, where there are some episodes where she's actually pretty absent. But she was in it enough, as were the boys. So a spoiler warning from now, I'll discuss kind of what happens when things seem to be going right, but then something starts to go very wrong. And the thing that starts to go very wrong is LeRoy's ability to throw the horseshoes. And the reason he does this is because he starts to fear letting Buck down. One of the boys, I believe it was Toby, if I remember correctly, was basically saying, you're really brave to be doing this. What if it goes wrong? What if you let Grandpa down, as they would have called him? And suddenly the fear sets in, and no longer is LeRoy able to just focus on the moment. He starts to panic, and by panicking and overthinking things, he is less able to throw the horseshoes successfully. And it's a really good lesson there about how if you do start to panic, you begin to think irrationally, you're not able to see things clearly, your judgment is clouded, and you don't perform your best. So actually, if it's a situation out of your control, there's no real benefit to panicking and worrying. And you just need to forget those thoughts as best as you can and do your best, and that's all you can do. I really enjoyed that message. I think the actual episode itself was very enjoyable. It's not one of my all-time favourites, but I still had a lot of fun with it, as I expected I would. And definitely an episode that I'll enjoy watching again.